Beneath Colorado's skies, beyond its red canyons, alpine meadows, and jagged peaks, hides a world older than memory. Here, stones are not just stones, they are whispers, warnings, and questions, carved into the land itself. Some sites defy logic, others bend it, and all seem to wait for the moment you finally notice them. Step closer, listen. The ground here remembers more than it will ever willingly reveal. High above winding canyons, tucked into sandstone alcoves that catch the sun like a secret, sit the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde. From a distance, they look impossibly fragile, delicate stone villages, balanced in shadows, somehow untouched for centuries. Up close, the masonry is perfect. Walls still straight, corners sharp, plaster faintly etched with patterns, yet entire rooms stand empty. Kivas cold, doorways leading into dark silence, no bodies, no battle scars, no explanation for why they were left behind. Theories fill the gap: drought, conflict, spiritual migration, but none answer every question. Even the smallest granary clings to its perch, as if waiting for someone to return. Standing here, you feel watched, but not by eyes in the present. The wind hums through the doorways, and in that hum, the stone seems to breathe. Something here was abandoned, yet it never stopped living. At Chimney Rock, two jagged spires split the sky, and between them, on a high ridge, lies an ancient complex that seems half-finished, half-forgotten. Stone towers rise waist-high before ending abruptly, as though the builders vanished mid-construction. Yet their placement is deliberate, aligned perfectly with lunar standstills, when the moon rises between the spires once every 18.6 years. Why begin something so monumental, only to leave it incomplete? Some suggest sudden catastrophe, others whisper of ceremonial purpose fulfilled before the walls could grow higher. Climbing the ridge, thin air sharpens every sound: your heartbeat, the scrape of boots on stone. Then silence swallows everything. You can imagine the builders pausing, tools in hand, looking toward the moonlit gap between towers, as if it signaled something, an arrival or a departure, and then they were simply gone. Spruce Tree House clings to its cliffside like a memory that refuses to fade. The dwellings are well preserved, their stone walls tight and clean, but it's the kivas that draw you in. Circular subterranean chambers, roofed with logs older than the nations that claim this land. Inside, the air feels close, almost heavy, as if it hasn't moved in centuries. Light falls in narrow shafts, touching walls that still bear faint handprints. Archaeologists say these rooms were for ceremony, for gathering, for something sacred. Yet here, their silence feels deliberate, like the hush before a voice you can't quite hear. Why were they sealed and left? Some kivas remain perfectly intact, roofs holding firm against time. Others gape open, their contents long gone. Standing at their edges, you can sense the boundary, the line between what the living can enter and what should remain untouched. In the lonely expanse of canyons of the ancients, a single great house rises from the earth. Massive walls, multi-story chambers, and doorways that line up so precisely they frame the horizon. This was no casual build. The architecture echoes Chaco Canyon's grandeur, yet here it stands alone, far from the known centers of that culture. The effort to raise it must have been immense, hauling sandstone blocks, cutting timber from distant mountains, and then abandonment. No sign of siege, no scorch marks, no mass graves, only scattered artifacts, as if the residents walked away in calm silence. Why create such a monumental structure, so far from others like it? Some believe it was a ceremonial outpost, others a waypoint in a vast trade network. But in the way the walls still catch the setting sun, you feel there's more, an intention we've lost, and perhaps were never meant to find. Near the base of Ute Mountain, a stretch of rock holds more than 200 petroglyphs, spirals, animals, human figures, and shapes whose meaning has blurred with time. Some carvings are deep and bold, others faint, as if drawn in whispers. Standing before them, you feel the stone's heat under the sun, the way it must have felt to the hands that carved it. These are not random marks. They form clusters, sequences, patterns. Some align with the mountain's shadow at specific times of year. Could this be a calendar, a record, a warning? The Ute people still regard the site as sacred, its stories guarded and spoken with care. For outsiders, the wall is a puzzle, missing most of its pieces. The carvings do not explain themselves, and perhaps they never will. Their language isn't lost, it's simply not ours to read. Hovenweep Castle stands on a canyon rim, its stone towers defiant against centuries of wind and heat. But the true mystery lies beneath. Passages and doorways that seem to lead nowhere or vanish entirely into collapsed earth. Some appear to have been deliberately sealed, walls closing off routes once vital to the structure's use. Theories range from defensive strategy to ceremonial restriction. Yet the uniform precision of the stonework suggests a deeper purpose. At night, when moonlight turns the walls silver, the idea of hidden movement, of people passing unseen, feels less like history and more like something ongoing. The air is cooler near the blocked entrances, and when you lean close, it's tempting to think you hear something faint beyond the stone. Not wind, not water, just a low hum, like the memory of footsteps still finding their way home. In the wide, open sweep of the San Luis Valley, among basalt outcrops and windswept grass, are boulders bearing human faces. Some are small and faint, worn smooth by centuries of weather. Others are sharp and expressive, with eyes, noses, and mouths carved deep into stone. They watch in silence, staring across the plain toward the mountains. No one knows who carved them or why. Some align with old footpaths, as if meant to greet or warn travelers. Others stand alone, far from any visible trail, staring into emptiness. Archaeologists hesitate to date them. The style is unlike known indigenous petroglyphs, yet the weathering speaks of immense age. Local stories say they are guardians, or markers for something hidden. When the wind moves across the valley at dusk, the shadows inside their carved eyes seem to shift, as if the stone itself were turning to follow your steps. Roxburgh State Park is famous for its tilted red sandstone spires, but deep within its less traveled reaches are lines of massive boulders, placed too neatly to be natural. Some form straight rows over uneven terrain. Others create geometric shapes, visible only from above. Geologists point to glacial movement or erosion, but certain alignments track the sun's path on solstices with uncanny precision. Standing among them, the sense of deliberate design is hard to shake. The gaps between stones are narrow, almost like corridors, and the sound here carries strangely. A whisper at one end is clear at the other. Were these boulders once part of an ancient ceremonial route, a massive calendar, or something we no longer have the language to name? In the stillness, you can almost imagine figures moving between them, silent in the shadow of stone, waiting for the sky to shift. On a low ridge outside La Junta, a wall of stone snakes across the land in a deliberate curve. It's low and weathered, its stones darkened by lichen, but its form is unmistakable, the long winding body of a serpent. Some say it's purely geological, a trick of erosion. Others argue the pattern is too precise, the bends too intentional. Its head points toward the rising sun on the summer solstice. Its tail tapers into the earth. Indigenous traditions often speak of serpents as water guardians, protectors, or forces of transformation. Could this wall be a monument to such a being, or a boundary marker imbued with spiritual meaning? The wind here seems to follow the wall's curve, whispering along its length. If you walk beside it at dawn, your shadow wins with it, as if you and the stone are moving together towards some shared destination. Hidden deep in Picketwire Canyon, lens. Reachable only by rough trails, a sandstone overhang shelters, a gallery of faded red and white paintings, human figures, handprints, abstract patterns, and shapes that resemble animals, all layered over each other, some sharp, some ghost-like from centuries of sun and wind. The site feels protected, the cliff wrapping around it like a shield. Archaeologists have studied the pigments, finding they were made from ground minerals mixed with plant resins, yet the exact age remains uncertain. Some paintings are clearly older than others, hinting that this shelter was returned to, again and again, over generations. Why here? Perhaps the acoustics, the way voices echo softly, made it a place for ceremony, or perhaps it was chosen for its view. A sweep of canyon that glows gold at sunset, as if the very walls remember the hands that painted their skin. In the remote folds of Unexplained Canyon, collectors and hikers have found flat, circular stones carved with geometric designs. Spirals, intersecting lines, and sunburst shapes cover their surfaces. Some are no bigger than a hand, others are heavy enough to require 2 people to move. They appear shaped by grinding, edges smoothed with care, then deliberately etched. Their purpose is unknown: tools, ceremonial objects, or something entirely different. None have been found in situ. They appear singly in creek beds or eroded slopes, as if the canyon releases them only reluctantly. Local ranchers tell of finding them decades ago and quietly keeping them, wary of outside attention. In the designs, some see star maps, others see symbolic records of events long forgotten. Holding one, the grooves catch your fingertips, and for a moment it feels less like stone and more like a page from a book you can't read. On a narrow shelf above the Gunnison River, a ring of stones frames a bare patch of earth. The stones themselves are carved, spirals, human forms, animal tracks, all facing inward toward the circle's center. It's an awkward place to reach, the ledge steep and the river loud below, yet the setting feels intentional. The carvings vary in age and style, suggesting different hands over centuries. Was this a council place? A ceremonial marker? Some researchers propose it was used for sky watching, its center marking the position of certain stars at key times. Standing inside the ring, the river's roar dulls, replaced by a curious quiet, as if the stones block out everything but the sky above. At night, that sky is vast and cold, and the carvings seem to catch the starlight, holding it in their grooves like they're waiting for the right moment to release it. At the foot of the Blanca Massif, where talus fields pour from the mountain, like frozen rivers, stories surface about stone-walled rooms, hidden beneath the scree. Shepherds speak of vents that exhale warm air in winter, of faint drumming that seems to rise from underfoot after storms. A few claim to have found low entrances, stacked stones forming lintels, soot staining the rock just inside, only to return and find the opening choked with fresh collapse. If there are rooms under the mountain, they aren't crude. The glimpses suggest squared corners and fitted blocks, the kind of precision that resists time. No official surveys confirm them, yet rumors persist of dry chambers, with blackened ceilings and niches, cut chest-high along the walls. Storage, ceremony, refuge? The massif keeps its silence, stands still long enough, and you notice how sound dulls here, as if the slope is listening, deciding what to keep and what to let go. South of Trinidad, in Pinon and Juniper country, a pattern emerges when drought strips the grass, curved lines of stone just under the soil, forming spirals and switchbacks that double back on themselves. Walk the route and you feel led, not forward, exactly, but inward. The stones are fist-sized and uniform, as if chosen with care, their placement too consistent to be ranch debris. Old-timers say the design appears after lightning-sparked fires, a ghost of a structure that refuses to stay buried. A few archaeologists suggest it could be a historic-era garden bed or windbreak, but the bends are tight, the switchbacks purposeful, and at the center sits a flat, circular stone scorched darker than the rest. When wind scratches across the surface, it moves in swirls, as though the land remembers being told to turn. If it is a labyrinth, It's not the sort meant to confuse. It's the other kind, the kind that teaches you how to arrive. High shelves along the Dolores River Canyon carry shadows that are not shadows at all. They're doors. Crawl to them, and you find small rooms tucked under overhangs, fronts sealed with stone and mud. Inside, the air stays cool and dry. Kernels found by early hikers were said to crumble like old maps between the fingers. These granaries are hard to reach and harder to see, their faces colored to match the cliff. Some are tiny, a single arm's length wide. Others run deeper than expected, curving around natural bulges in the sandstone. They speak of people who anticipated lean years, who learned the canyon's moods and stored against them. Why were they abandoned with lids in place, caches still sealed? Perhaps the builders planned to return and never could. From the river, those hidden mouths look like nothing. From within, the world narrows to the scrape of stone and the soft hiss of wind that never quite enters. In the flat tops, a cliff face bears a pale scar, a vertical seam, where rock was mortared smooth long ago. Hunters say behind it lies a cave, whose mouth has been sealed with fitted stone, gaps packed tight with clay that hardened like bone. No path leads there. Talus and brush defend the approach. Who sealed it, and why? The mortar contains grit from a distant creek bed, as if the makers brought materials from somewhere else to finish the job. Some see the faint outline of a lintel hidden under lichen. Others argue it's only wishful thinking. At dusk, the face holds the day's heat, and standing near it, you feel a breath of warm air slip past your hands. Proof of hollowness within, a hiding place, a burial, a cache too dangerous to leave open. The seal is unbroken, which may be the point. Whatever it holds is meant to stay on the far side of that line. Leadville's hills hide miles of tunnels, veins punched through rock in a frenzy of awe and hope. Many lie drowned now. The pumps long silent, water rising to claim the corridors. Divers talk about doors that open onto blackness and ladders that plunge into cold green voids. Sometimes lantern light hits wooden cribbing so well preserved, it looks new, then a turn reveals collapsed chambers, where timbers fold like ribs. Old maps hint at crosscuts no one can find, tunnels sketched in tidy ink that lead to nothing on the ground. The water muffles sound and magnifies small things. A single drip becomes a heartbeat. A shifting current feels like a hand. Were earlier shafts dug into older hollows? The men who worked here told of drafts in dead ends and strange echoes, and of finding stacked stones in places no miner would bother to stack them. The tunnels flood upward, and the questions rise with them. Near Crestone's foothills, a low ring of stones sits in a meadow, easy to miss unless the light slants just so. Push aside the grass, and you find a shaft lined with tight-laid rock, descending straight and neat into darkness. No bucket hardware, no modern cribbing, just stone on stone, dry-laid with a mason's patience. Locals say it fills after summer monsoons, and then drains as if the mountain drinks. Test pits nearby reveal no foundation walls, no obvious habitation, only scattered flakes, and a single grinding stone worn thin. Why a well here, alone? Some think it wasn't a well at all, but a ritual shaft, a place to offer grain or water back to the earth, or to listen for the hollow reply of the unseen. Drop a pebble, and the echo lingers longer than it should, as if the shaft opens into something bigger, a chamber, a seam, or simply the quiet the land keeps for itself. When Blue Mesa Reservoir was created, the rising waters swallowed valleys, homesteads, and rumors of something far older. Divers and fishermen talk about stone foundations beneath the surface, aligned in ways that don't match the 19th century ranches known to have been there. In the murky green, walls appear, stacked without mortar, edges softened by silt but still standing. Local whispers claim these weren't pioneer buildings at all, but remnants of structures no one remembers being built. Old maps show nothing here before settlement, yet some of the stonework resembles techniques found in ancient cliff dwellings far to the southwest. In winter, when the water level drops, dark shapes emerge near the shore. Rectangles, corners, the suggestion of streets. The reservoir's surface looks calm, even friendly under summer sun, but below, the drowned stones keep their own season, waiting in the cold, holding on to a history the shoreline no longer tells. On quiet mornings at Twin Lakes, a perfect circle of land floats free from the shore, moving almost imperceptibly with wind and current. Locals call it the Wandering Island, though it's really a dense mat of vegetation, rooted so tightly it behaves like solid ground. Step onto it, and the surface gives slightly, a reminder you're standing on something unmoored. Its shape is uncanny, almost too round to be natural, and it drifts back to nearly the same spot every year, as if tethered by something unseen. Some say it's a remnant of an ancient beaver dam system. Others believe it marks a sacred site, preserved and carried by the lake itself. Old fishing stories mention lights hovering above it on certain nights, moving with the island as though in escort. Whether a quirk of nature or something more deliberate, the circle remains intact year after year, a silent traveler across mirrored water. The hot springs of Pagosa steam in the cold air, their mineral-rich waters rising from depths no one has fully mapped. For centuries, indigenous tribes considered them sacred, a place of healing and of contact with the unseen. Archaeologists have found worked stone fragments and tools buried near the main spring, some older than nearby settlement records suggest. Oral histories speak of rituals performed at night, when steam blurred the line between earth and sky. The spring's heat has never failed, even in the harshest winters, and the water emerges at a temperature so precise, it almost feels intentional. Modern testing can explain the chemistry, but not the sense that the place is alive. Step close, and the air thickens, scents of mineral and soil clinging to your clothes. The constant bubbling feels like conversation, a voice too old for words, still speaking to anyone patient enough to listen. Deep along a bend in the Conejos River, boulders form a line across the current, their placement too even to be natural. In low water, the pattern emerges clearly, fitted stones angled against the flow. A design built to endure. There is no record of construction, no mention in rancher logs or early survey maps. Some speculate it was an indigenous fishing weir, guiding trout into narrow channels for easy catch. Others see it as part of a more complex system, perhaps controlling seasonal floods. Moss coats the upriver face, and the sound of water slipping between stones is steady, unchanging. When snow melts swells the river, the dam vanishes beneath white water, but when the floods pass, it stands again, as if nothing touched it. Its builders are unknown, their reasons unrecorded, but the stones hold their ground, resisting both the river's pull and the years that try to carry them away. Along the Arkansas River, sheer cliffs rise from the bank, their lower walls usually hidden by water. During drought years, when the river falls, panels of petroglyphs emerge from the shadows. Spirals, animal shapes, and human figures stand just above the exposed mud, their placement suggesting they were carved when water levels were much lower, or when the river ran a different course entirely. The rock bears a patina that speaks of great age, yet the carvings remain sharp in places, as if shielded from the elements. Theories range from messages to river travelers, to ceremonial marks, meant to be hidden most of the time, visible only when conditions allowed. The sight is fleeting, the water always returns, covering the carvings once more. To see them is to feel like you've stepped into a moment not meant for every season, a brief alignment of time, river and stone. The San Luis Valley was once dotted with shallow lakes, now reduced to marshes, or gone entirely. Archaeologists working in the dried basins have found post holes, hearthstones and midden piles, the footprints of villages that vanished with the water. Some sites show signs of long-term habitation, with carefully laid stone foundations and storage pits. Others seem more transient, yet all share a puzzling detail: they were abandoned quickly, with useful tools left behind. Sediment studies suggest rapid environmental change, but oral traditions tell of something else. Warnings from elders to leave the water's edge. Today, only faint depressions and scattered stones remain on the cracked earth, the outlines of homes where reeds once swayed. When the wind moves over the flats, it carries the smell of dust and something older, a scent that hints the water and the life it sustained might one day return. In a grassy field, far from any road, a single upright stone rises taller than a man. Its sides are weathered, but still bear the chisel marks of shaping, faint grooves running in parallel down one face. There is no other stone like it nearby, no obvious quarry, no record of its placement. It stands alone, its base sunk deep into the soil, as if anchored with purpose. Locals say it points to the sunrise on certain days, its shadow stretching toward the distant hills. Some believe it's a boundary marker, others a remnant of a larger circle now lost to farming. At dusk its silhouette cuts sharp against the sky, a dark blade of memory in an open field. Standing beside it, you can feel the stone's warmth from the day, and beneath that, a colder core, as if it has been holding its own season for centuries. Deep in Pike National Forest, far from the main trails, a column of massive boulders rises in a precarious stack. Each stone is large enough to crush a cabin, yet they balance in a tapering tower that seems immune to wind and snow. Geologists suggest a glacial origin, but the evenness of the layers feels arranged, the gaps between stones just wide enough for a person to slip through. Some of the boulders bear flattened tops, smoothed as if by deliberate shaping. The surrounding forest grows thick, but inside the tower's shadow, the air is noticeably cooler. Hunters tell of finding offerings, feathers, carved sticks, small piles of grain, tucked into the crevices. The structure's purpose, if it has one, is unknown, but it stands like a sentinel over a clearing, where even birds seem reluctant to linger long. High in the Sangre de Cristo range, where the air is thin and the slopes sharp, a triangular outline of stones marks the crest of a ridge. Each side measures roughly the same length, the corners angled with precision. Inside, the ground is bare, almost scoured, as if nothing has grown there for centuries. The walls are low but consistent, their stones laid flat and tight without mortar. No signs of shelter, no hearth, no roof support. Suggest it was not for living. The position commands a view of multiple valleys, each corner pointing toward a distant landmark. Some suspect a signaling station, others a sacred enclosure where ceremonies were tied to the peaks and sky. At dawn, the first light hits one point of the triangle directly, spilling across the interior in a way that feels choreographed. Hidden in the folds of the wet mountains is a rock shelter unlike most natural overhangs. Its floor is framed by 4 straight walls, forming a square. The walls rise to meet the overhanging cliff, blending natural and built stone seamlessly. The square's edges are aligned almost perfectly to the cardinal directions, a detail often missed on first glance. Inside, the floor is flat and surprisingly dry, with traces of soot staining one corner. There are no petroglyphs, no obvious storage pits, only the shelter's odd perfection. Its square form feels out of place in the wild curves of the mountains, a geometry that hints at deliberate design. When storms pass overhead, the sound changes inside, the rain becoming a low drumbeat against the stone. On a rise in Kit Carson County, a series of stones stretch out in 2 intersecting lines, forming a cross when viewed from above. The stones are large enough to resist plows, which is perhaps why they remain. No one knows who placed them, or for what reason. The orientation is strange, neither perfectly aligned with the compass, nor matching known star patterns. The intersection is marked by a single larger stone, flat-topped and ringed by a faint depression. Some say it's a marker for buried treasure, others that it's a memorial to an event long forgotten. The land around it rolls gently, but from the center of the cross, the horizon feels farther away, as if the shape has pulled the world back just a little. Perched on a wind-scoured ridge in the San Juan Mountains, a flat slab of stone rests atop a base of smaller rocks, forming what looks like an altar. Its placement is commanding. Sheer drops on 3 sides, the 4th opening to a view of peaks layered in blue haze. The slab is smooth in the center, edges chipped as if from tools. No modern trail leads here, and the climb is difficult, suggesting whoever built it had a reason worth the effort. On certain evenings, the sun sets directly behind the altar when viewed from a narrow approach, framing it in light. Whether used for offerings, observation, or something else entirely, the altar's presence is undeniable. The wind here is constant, carrying a low hum through cracks in the stone, a sound that lingers in your ears long after you leave the ridge. On a sun-baked ledge of the Uncompahgre Plateau, spirals are cut deep into the sandstone, dozens of them, some barely the size of a coin, others wider than a man's shoulders. They're arranged in clusters, with certain spirals linked by straight lines, as if part of a larger diagram. The grooves are sharp in places, weather softened in others, suggesting different ages or repeated visits by different hands. Spirals appear in indigenous rock art across the southwest, often tied to water, migration, or celestial cycles. But these are unusually concentrated. At sunset, shadows pool inside the grooves, turning them into dark whirlpools on glowing stone. Some align with gaps in the plateau rim where the sun sets on solstice. Whether meant as maps, markers, or messages, the spirals draw the eye inward, as if the stone itself is pulling you toward its center. Near Manitou Springs, half hidden in a thicket, lies a granite boulder pitted with dozens of shallow, round depressions. Each cup mark is uniform in size, too precise to be natural weathering. They scatter across the surface in no obvious pattern, though some form faint arcs and clusters. Similar markings elsewhere have been linked to grinding or game boards, but the location here, far from any known habitation site, raises questions. Rainwater collects in the cups, reflecting the sky in tiny mirrors. Some researchers wonder if the arrangement corresponds to constellations visible in the ancient sky. Others believe the marks were used in ritual, each depression holding offerings or pigment. When wind stirs the surrounding grass, it sounds like faint whispering, as though the boulder is remembering the hands that once pressed against its cool surface. In Boulder Canyon, a block of pale stone rests against the cliff base, its front shaped into the likeness of a face. The features are stylized: almond eyes, a triangular nose, a wide, open mouth. Yet the symmetry is undeniable. Time has softened the edges, but the impression remains strong enough to unsettle at first sight. No tool marks are visible, as if the carving was done with patient abrasion rather than sharp cuts. Locals say the mask watches over a nearby spring, its gaze fixed eternally downhill. Some call it a guardian, others a warning. On rainy days, water runs down the carved cheeks in thin streams, giving the face a weeping expression. Whether human-made or the product of improbable erosion, the mask stone holds its ground, patient and unblinking, as if waiting for someone to speak its true name. High on a ledge overlooking the Royal Gorge, faint carvings line a slab of stone, straight strokes, angled cuts, and repeating shapes that bear a passing resemblance to runes. They're unlike the petroglyphs commonly found in the region, lacking animals, spirals, or human figures. Wabin Senor, Spiber Senor. These have been torsu epechtia commandais. The lines are shallow but deliberate, running in sequences that look ordered, as though forming a written language. Some believe they're the work of early miners, marking claims or directions. Others suggest they're far older, tied to an unknown culture, or an outsider contact lost to time. The position is awkward, reachable only by climbing, which may explain why the marks remain largely undisturbed. In the shifting light of afternoon, the inscriptions seem to flicker, as if something about them resists being clearly seen for long. In a quiet pasture in Fremont County, a rectangular slab lies half buried, its exposed face etched with interlocking geometric patterns. The lines are straight and deep, the corners sharp, as though cut with metal tools. Yet no modern records mention the slab being placed here. The design is mesmerizing, repeating diamonds bordered by parallel lines, interrupted by small deliberate gaps. Cattle graze around it, indifferent, but visitors often describe a strange sense of stillness while standing near it, as though the air thickens slightly. Some think it's a fragment of a larger structure. Others believe it was always meant to lie flat, perhaps as a floor or ceremonial platform. Whatever its origin, the slab has endured decades of weather without losing its precision, its patterns still crisp enough to catch the last light of evening, like threads of gold. In Root County's backcountry, an almost perfectly spherical boulder rests in a shallow hollow, its surface weathered smooth. Measuring nearly 3 feet across, it seems out of place among the jagged rocks and angular talus of the surrounding slope. Natural concretion is one explanation, yet the stone's uniformity feels intentional, its surface free of cracks or inclusions. Similar spheres found elsewhere in the world have been linked to both natural and human causes, sparking debate about their purpose. Here, no quarry is nearby, no other rounded stones in sight. Snow collects evenly around its base in winter, melting last in spring as if the stone retains some hidden chill. Whether a product of geology's patience or a crafted object with a long-forgotten role, the ball sits unmoving, the curve of its form catching the eye from every angle, as if daring you to guess why it exists at all. In a remote valley of Chaffee County, a narrow line of flat stones runs straight for hundreds of feet, vanishing into the undergrowth. Each stone is carefully placed, their edges touching, the surface worn smooth as though by countless footsteps. The alignment holds even where the land dips or rises, ignoring the natural lay of the terrain. Some think it was a livestock trail, hardened by human effort. Others suspect it's much older, a deliberate road connecting places now forgotten. Grass and soil have swallowed most of it, but after heavy rain, the stones gleam in a way that makes the path reappear. Walking it feels strange, a sense of being guided, as though the road remembers where it's meant to go, even if you no longer can. High above Loveland, in windswept mountain passes, stacks of stones stand in lonely groups, each cairn built with a similar size and style. They rise from bare rock where nothing else could anchor them, their positions marking lines across the ridge. Hikers sometimes add to them, unaware that some cairns match old maps drawn long before these trails were modernized. A few align with distant peaks or valleys, hinting they were more than simple waypoints. In low fog, they emerge suddenly from the mist, solid and silent, like sentinels. The wind pushes through them with a hollow tone, a sound that feels intentional, as though the arrangement was meant to speak in a language of air and stone. On a ridge above South Park's wide basin, a line of stones stretches for nearly a quarter mile, each boulder positioned with consistent spacing. The line bends only once, at an angle that points directly toward the setting sun on the winter solstice. The stones are too heavy to have been dragged here casually. Some weigh several tons and rest atop bedrock, where they could not have rolled naturally. The purpose remains unknown. No nearby settlement, no obvious defensive value. From above, the formation looks like a ruler drawn against the landscape, dividing open space from open sky. At sunset in winter, the alignment casts a single, unbroken shadow toward the basin, like a dark road leading into the earth. In Moffat County's high desert, a formation of stones forms a perfect arrowhead shape, its point aimed toward a distant canyon. The shaft extends behind it, a straight line of smaller stones, while the fletching spreads wide at the rear. The layout is visible only from above, or at a distance, leading some to think it was meant as a signal for travelers, or even for those in the sky. Ranchers in the early 1900s used large markers for aerial navigation, but weathering on these stones suggests a much older origin. The arrow's point aligns with a gap in the canyon wall where water once flowed, hinting at a resource worth marking. Whatever its purpose, the arrow remains sharp-edged in form, a message in stone that still points the way. Following the San Miguel River, a narrow trail winds between cliffs carved with petroglyphs every few hundred feet. Some panels are simple, handprints, spirals, while others are intricate, showing hunting scenes, masked figures, and abstract grids. The repetition of symbols suggests the trail itself was ceremonial, perhaps walked in stages with each panel marking a stop. The cliffs amplify sound. Footsteps and voices bounce back in strange echoes. Certain carvings catch the morning sun directly, flaring briefly before fading into shadow, as if they were meant to be seen only at a specific time of day. Walking the length of the trail feels like following a story told in pieces, one that begins and ends in places you can't quite reach. Near the base of the collegiate peaks, 3 tall stones stand in a row, their tops jagged but level with one another. When viewed from a certain spot in the valley, the rising sun on the summer solstice slips perfectly between the first and second stone before climbing over the third. The effect lasts only seconds, yet the placement is exact. The stones themselves are not from the surrounding slopes. Their type matches a quarry miles away. Moving them would have taken immense effort, suggesting the alignment was worth the trouble. Beyond the marker, the valley floor is empty, offering no clue as to who built it or why. On that one morning each year, however, the light and stone meet with such precision that it feels less like coincidence and more like a conversation between earth and sky. On a remote ridge within Dinosaur National Monument, 2 stone pillars rise side by side, each over 20 feet tall. They are nearly identical in height and width, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of wind, yet they stand apart from any natural outcrop. Between them is a narrow gap, perfectly vertical, framing the distant horizon. From certain angles, the pillars look like a gateway, their symmetry too precise to dismiss as chance. Local tales speak of them as sentinels, watching over an ancient trail that once passed this way. During sunset, the gap glows with light, a fleeting moment when the pillars seem to hold the sun in their grasp before releasing it to the land beyond. No tools marks are visible, but their placement suggests intent, a silent doorway whose purpose has been swallowed by time. In the Yampa Valley, a massive boulder sits alone in a meadow, split cleanly in two, as if cut by a giant blade. The gap between the halves is just wide enough for a person to pass through, and inside, the walls are etched with shallow grooves that catch the morning light. The split aligns with the sunrise on the equinox, casting a beam of light through the opening that strikes a smaller stone set into the ground behind it. Some believe it's a natural fracture, later adapted for ritual. Others argue the split itself was the reason the boulder was chosen. On still mornings, the space between the halves feels warmer than the air outside, as though it holds the memory of countless dawns. High in the Elk Mountains, an isolated platform of tightly fitted stones forms a near-perfect hexagon. The surface is flat and level, built from blocks that seem shaped to lock together without mortar. The platform sits on a slope with no nearby structures, commanding a panoramic view of the surrounding peaks. Snow slides off its surface more quickly than the ground around it, revealing the pattern even in winter. No cultural records mention it, and no obvious function presents itself. Too small for a dwelling, too deliberate for random placement. Some suggest it was a base for a wooden structure long since gone. Others think it was always meant to stand bare, perhaps as a stage for rituals under the open sky. In the quiet of high altitude, it feels like a place where something once stood that mattered enough to make the climb worthwhile. In a patch of open pinyon forest, a ring of stones lies hidden beneath layers of pine needles. The circle is about 30 feet across, its perimeter marked by evenly spaced rocks, the size of a man's head. There is no break in the circle, no sign of an entrance. Within, the ground is unusually level and free of large stones, as though cleared intentionally. Unlike known kivas or ceremonial enclosures, there are no visible fire pits or wall remains, just the circle, quiet and unassuming. Hunters who've stumbled upon it say the air inside feels still, the forest noise fading at its edge. Without markers or records, it remains unnamed and unclaimed, a silent shape holding its meaning just out of reach. Blanca Canyon's sandstone walls hide many small caves, but one stands apart. An entrance barely wider than a shoulder leads to a chamber lined with stone blocks. The walls are dry-laid and precise, their corners square, the ceiling reinforced with flat slabs. No artifacts remain inside, only a smooth floor and a faint stain on the back wall where water once trickled. Access is difficult, requiring a climb up a crumbling ledge, which may explain why it's gone largely unexamined. Some speculate it was a storage room or a hiding place. Others wonder if it was part of a larger complex now collapsed and hidden. The chamber's silence feels deliberate, as if it was built to keep whatever was inside apart from the world outside. On a rounded hilltop in Teller County, low stone walls form an enclosure roughly oval in shape. The stones are unshaped, but stacked neatly, rising no more than 3 feet. Inside, the space is empty, save for a shallow depression near the center. The hill offers a clear view in all directions, making it a strategic location, yet there's no sign it was ever used for defense. The walls lack gates, suggesting it may not have been meant to keep anything out or in. In the early morning, mist clings to the enclosure, curling over the stones like smoke from an invisible fire. Without artifacts or records, its builders and purpose remain unknown, leaving only the shape on the hill and the feeling that it once mattered to someone long gone. Colorado's peaks, canyons and plains hold more than beauty. They guard questions no map or textbook can settle. Stones placed with impossible care, carvings whose meanings have slipped from memory, structures left watching an empty horizon. The land doesn't rush to answer, and maybe it never will. But in its silence lies an invitation to keep looking, to keep wondering, and to walk where mystery still chooses to live.